So, folks, obviously, the candle, the dark room, they are meant to give you the feeling of supernatural happenings. In other words, the dark magic, the witches' predictions, the prophecies that take place in Macbeth. And we're going to be reading the last part or pieces of the last part of the play tonight. And I just want to make sure that atmosphere is clear. Now, we're going to go back and just recap. Okay, remember, the quick summary: Macbeth fights in battle very bravely. And after the battles, the king says that he is going to give a new title, Thane of Cawdor, to Macbeth. Macbeth doesn't know it yet. He meets the witches. They tell him, "You are Thane of Glamis now. You will be Thane of Cawdor, and you will be king." Okay, and they tell Banquo, don't forget, that you won't be king, but your children will. Okay, and so we don't know how that's all going to play out. Then folks ride up. Macbeth is named Thane of Cawdor by the king's men, and he's amazed and he thinks, wow, maybe I'll be king afterwards. He lets his wife know about all this, and she says, "Evil spirits, come to me and make me strong to make sure this happens. If I need to kill, if I need to push my husband into killing, let me do that." Okay, Macbeth comes home. The king comes to visit them in their home. During the banquet, Macbeth is conflicted. He doesn't know right or wrong what to do. Um, but when he tells his wife, "No, I shouldn't do this," she pushes him, questions his manhood, and forces him almost into this killing. And Macbeth, being ambitious and not afraid to kill, um, goes in and kills King Duncan. And then he frames two of the guards by getting them drunk and then, when they're asleep, smearing them with blood and putting weapons in their hands. Macduff finds them, and Macbeth comes and kills the two guards, obviously, so they can't tell what really happened. Okay, Macduff is suspicious, and the king's sons who are in the castle, they run away. Okay, one of them is Malcolm. Now pay attention, he's coming back. This is like the recap that you get at the beginning of a Netflix show. Okay, we're just refreshing our memory of everything that went before. Okay, or the key ideas. Now, Macbeth then is named king in place of Duncan now that Duncan's dead. Okay, but he's very uncomfortable. Okay, and when he calls a meeting of the Thanes, Macduff is not there, and that's worrying. Okay, and at some point, Banquo expresses that he's worried that Macbeth did something foul, he says, something awful to get his way to king. Okay, because Banquo obviously remembers that the witches made this prophecy, and Macbeth kills Banquo, sends men to kill Banquo and his son, but his son escapes. Now that's important, remember, because the witches predicted your sons will be kings. So if the men did kill his son, then that prediction could not have become true at any point. But Fleance escapes. Okay. Macbeth, in front of the lords, um, begins to hallucinate. He imagines that he has seen the ghost of Banquo, or at that time, perhaps he actually did see the ghost. Okay, perhaps that's what they believed. Okay, and he says, "Don't you shake your bloody hair at me, Banquo." So Macbeth is being haunted for his evil deeds. Okay, Banquo was his good friend. Okay, perhaps it's the guilt that Macbeth feels that's making him behave this way. So he goes back to the witches and he says, "Tell me, what's going to happen?" and he sees three ghosts. Remember, the first ghost says, "Beware Macduff." Okay, so watch out for Macduff. Remember, Macduff was one of the Thanes, the Thane of Fife, who ran away after the killing of Duncan. Okay, we don't know where he's gone at this point. Okay, but he's gone away, which suggests he doesn't trust Macbeth. Okay, next, a child smeared in blood comes and said, "Don't be afraid, for no one born from a woman shall harm Macbeth." Now that suggests no one born from a woman in the quote normal way. Okay? There's a bit of a riddle there. We don't know. So who wouldn't have been born from a woman? Okay? Who could that be that would kill or harm Macbeth? And finally, a third apparition comes, okay, with a tree in his hand, and it says, "Don't worry, Macbeth. You shall never be defeated until this forest comes to the hill where your castle is." Okay, so Macbeth is feeling pretty confident, and that brings us up to where we are. Okay, now we are on page 108, okay, in your workbook if you want to go to this, or you can just look on with me here. I'm going to, try to zoom in. Okay. Now, the text tells us Macbeth is wrong to feel confident about his position as king. He is unpopular among his subjects, and Malcolm, the old king's son, has been working with an English lord to organize an army to march on Scotland. Okay? So Macbeth is feeling very confident after he sees the witches, and they say, "Don't worry, you're not going to be killed by anyone born from a woman, and you're not going to be defeated until this forest comes to your castle." Well, both of those sound impossible, so he's feeling pretty good. Okay, but people don't like him. Okay, and again, Duncan's son Malcolm is now working with an English lord to march an army on Scotland. Okay, news that Malcolm and the English army are marching to Scotland to try and overthrow Macbeth reaches Dunsinane Castle, where Macbeth now lives. When a messenger tells him that the troops are fast approaching, he says this short speech. Okay, now pay close attention. I'm going to try to read it without emotion. Okay, and I'll show you why in a minute. "Bring me no more reports. Let them fly all. Till Birnam Wood remove to Dunsinane, I cannot taint with fear. I'll fight till from my bones my flesh be hacked." Okay, now, obviously, you may not understand every word, but there are some things that'll stand out to you. Bring me no more reports, okay? I don't want any more reports about what's happening with this army, okay? Why? Because until the forest, Birnam Wood, moves, here they say remove, but moves to my castle, I'm not going to worry. I can't be poisoned with fear. Okay? I will fight until, and this part you don't need a lot of explanation, from my bones my flesh be hacked. In other words, all the skin and flesh be chopped off his bones. Okay? A very, very violent image. Okay? And that tells you a little bit about who Macbeth is. Okay? He's a violent person. Now, we're going to go to the first part of your task here. If I can zoom in and across and in again. Now, it says in this task you will work in pairs. Of course, you can't do that at the moment, soon enough. Okay, to present a speech from the play. Okay, so you can see here's Macbeth's castle, Dunsinane, and here are the enemy troops marching toward the castle. Okay. In what way would Macbeth say the speech that we just read? What emotions would be showing or evident? So, what emotions would he be showing? Okay, I want you to think about these. You don't need to write down the answers to these. Okay, but how would he be feeling? Okay, practice different ways of performing the speech. Is he angry? Is he confident? Is he arrogant or nervous or exhausted or depressed? Okay, it could be a combination of all those, and there's no real right answer. It could be any of those. You might even mix some of them together. And what I want you to do is, using the voice recordings app on your iPad, please make a recording of yourself reading that speech. Just need to do it once, but I would say practice first, okay, until you feel like you can give it a good effort. Okay, at least pick one of those emotions and make it really clear that you're reading it. Nobody else is going to hear this except for me. Okay. So, again, you're going to be reading this with emotion. Okay. Go ahead and pause that there and do some practice. Okay. Just take 5 minutes or so on that. Okay. When you're done, then and you've made your recording, then you can unpause and continue. Okay. I'm going to move on now. Hopefully, you've done that and given it your best shot. Now, moving on to the next piece here. Okay, there's a glossary entry here that tells us that the word camouflage, okay, you probably have heard that word, but maybe didn't recognize the spelling. Okay, camouflage, to conceal or hide yourself from view. Now, this is very interesting because it relates to one of the predictions. Meanwhile, in a field not too far away from Dunsinane, Macbeth's castle, Malcolm tells his soldiers to camouflage or hide themselves with branches from Burnham Wood. Okay, that's the forest. Remember, the witches said, or the ghosts that the witches brought out said, not until Burnham Wood, this forest, comes to your castle. Okay, well, these are branches from the forest, and it looks like they're going to be moving toward the castle. Okay, so in some way, it looks like one of the predictions is coming true, and that maybe he does need to worry now. Okay, so we've answered these questions. Okay, think back to the witch's third apparition. How did Macbeth interpret it? So please write this down. Okay, Macbeth thought, that's impossible. How could the forest come to my castle? I don't have anything to worry about. Okay, so Macbeth, how did Macbeth interpret it? The answer here is Macbeth understood it to mean that he was not in danger. Okay, so that's the answer for number one. He understood it to mean that he was not in danger. Now, number two, what has actually happened? Well, soldiers have taken branches from the forest and are moving toward his castle. Okay, so that's the answer. Soldiers have taken branches from the forest and are moving toward the castle. You might even add, making it look like the forest is moving to his castle. Okay, so pause it if you need to write that down. Pause it if you need more time to write it down. You do need to write it down, please. Okay, and number three, what do you think might happen next? Now that the troops are moving toward the castle, what do you think is going to happen? Okay, uh, just make your best guess based on what you've seen so far. Okay, if you need to pause that before we move on here, go ahead. Now, this is a very dramatic part of the story. This is the end for Lady Macbeth. Lady Macbeth is now full of remorse. Now, that remorse is regret. Okay. She feels terrible for her part in killing King Duncan. Now, remember, she wanted these evil spirits to come into her body and help her do anything she needed to do, but it was too much for her. Okay. She starts to sleepwalk and she constantly scrubs her hands, trying to get rid of an imaginary stain, a blood stain. Okay, so she's rubbing her hands. She wants the stain to go away. There's nothing you can see on her hands, but she believes that she's done something wrong. Okay, you might have heard the expression that someone has blood on their hands. Okay, this certainly relates uh, to that expression. She is heard to say, "Out, damn Spot, out." Unable to go on any longer, she takes her own life. Okay, this is quite a heavy scene, and I want you to see uh, Judi Dench, who is a very famous actress. Obviously, maybe you've seen her in something, or you know who she is. Okay, but she's regarded as an elite actress in Shakespeare, in particular. Okay, so we're going to watch her as a very young actress um, just act out a bit of the scene where Lady Macbeth is feeling regret. We won't actually see her taking her own life here. We're not going to get that far.
You see, her eyes are open.
Aye, but their senses are shut.
What is it she does now? Look how she rubs her hands.
It is an accustomed action with her to seem thus, washing her hands. I have known her continue in this a quarter of an hour. Yet, here's a spot.
She speaks.
Out. Damn spot out, I say. 1, 2. Why then, 'tis time to do it. Hell is murky. Am my Lord Fie, a soldier and feared? What need we fear, who knows it, when none can call our power to account? Yet who would have thought the old man to have had so much blood in him? Do you mark that? The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now?
Okay, so obviously a very heavy scene, and you may not have understood everything, but hopefully you heard her say, "Who would have known the old man had so much blood in him?" Who is she talking about there? That's King Duncan. Okay, she's regretting the killing of him. She didn't understand what that was actually going to be like. Okay, and then she says, "The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now?" Okay, the Thane of Fife is Macduff, the one who went to get the army from England. Okay, and is now marching toward Macbeth. And she says, "The Thane of Fife had a wife. Where is she now?" Macbeth has had Macduff's wife and child killed. Okay, and Lady Macbeth knows it, and she's saying these things out loud. She's sleepwalking here. Okay, but she's speaking out loud, so really the truth is getting out. Okay, now I'm not going to have you do this task 17. I'm not going to ask you to do that task. Um, going on, this is page 112. Okay, the battle. Meanwhile, Macbeth prepares to meet Malcolm's army. Okay, Malcolm is Duncan's son, remember, King Duncan who was killed. His son is marching with the army from England. Even though his men are deserting him, Macbeth decides to stay and fight. So people are leaving Macbeth. They don't want to fight for him. They know he's in bad condition. Macbeth appears quite unmoved or not bothered when he hears the news of his wife's death. Why do you think this might be? Why would Macbeth not show a reaction when he finds out that his wife has taken her own life? Hard to imagine, okay, but maybe he thinks she's responsible for all of this. She pushed him into this when he knew it was wrong. Okay, perhaps there's some blame there. Or perhaps he's so disturbed by this whole situation, he's not in his right mind. Okay, those are a couple of possibilities. Now, Macbeth fights bravely, believing that he cannot be defeated. Remember the witch's words, no man of woman born shall harm Macbeth. So no one born from a woman shall harm Macbeth. This gives him confidence. Okay, now we are not going to do task 18 here. Okay, but you might just briefly ask yourself, what would you do if you were Macbeth? The other lords are running away. The English army is coming to Dunsinane, and the forest, Birnam Wood, appears to be moving. What would you do? Would you go and barricade yourself into a room? Would you try to escape? Would you go back to the witches? What would you do? Okay. Now, hail, King of Scotland. The British troops, led by Malcolm, are moving toward Dunsinane, where Macbeth remains. Okay, so he's staying in his castle. That's what he's decided to do. Cleverly disguised as Birnam Wood, they finally manage to storm or break into Macbeth's castle. Inside, Macbeth, who is dressed in his full armor, awaits them. Most of his thanes or lords have deserted him, they've left. Now, he's still brave. Okay, now he was brave at the beginning, but he had some morality, some sense of right and wrong. Now he doesn't. He's killing everybody who stands in his way. Okay, but he's still brave. He fights some of the advancing troops until he is confronted by a former friend, someone who was his friend before, but not now, the Thane of Fife. That's Macduff. Okay, now remember the first warning from the witches was beware Macduff. Okay, Macduff has good reason to hate Macbeth because Macbeth recently ordered the murder of Macduff's wife and children. Okay, as I said. So Macbeth had his wife and children killed. Now, they come face to face, ready to fight. Macbeth says, they have tied me to a stake. I cannot fly. I can't run away. But bear-like, I must fight the course. Now, in Shakespeare's time, you may be aware, one of the sources of entertainment, they didn't have Netflix, okay? They didn't have Xbox, okay? What did they do? Well, one of the forms of entertainment was bear baiting. So they would chain a bear to a stake in the ground and then send things to fight it. Okay, dogs, for example. Okay, and he's saying he's like the bear. Okay, he can't run away. He needs to just fight whatever comes his way. Okay, now he says, what's he that was not born of woman? Okay, in other words, where is this person that was not born of woman? And there's Macduff. Tyrant, show thy face, says Macduff. Okay, a tyrant is an evil ruler who abuses his power. If you be slain or killed, and with no stroke of mine. So if you're killed and it's not me that kills you, my wife and children's ghosts will haunt me still. Okay, so if somebody else kills you, my wife and children's ghosts are going to haunt me. Okay, so Macduff feels that he needs to take revenge himself on Macbeth. He wants to be the one to kill Macbeth to revenge the deaths of his own wife and children. Okay, and he shouts, "Turn, hellhound, turn!" And Macbeth says, with great confidence, "I bear a charmed life, which must not yield to one of woman born." So he's saying, I'm protected by magic, essentially, and I can't be killed by anyone born from a woman. Now, here's a key moment in the play. Macbeth says, Macduff was, from his mother's womb, untimely ripped. Now, what that means is there was an emergency C-section. You may know what that is. Sometimes when a baby can't be born in the normal fashion, there's a surgery done on the womb, the woman's midsection, to remove the child through the stomach, essentially. Not the stomach itself, but that area of the body. Okay, so that's how my second daughter was born, actually. And some of you may have been born that way. Okay, but at that time it was obviously quite a dramatic procedure, much more dangerous. And Macduff was born in that way. So he wasn't born of woman. In other words, he wasn't, his mother didn't give birth to him in the normal fashion. So he doesn't fit into this category. So he can harm Macbeth. And then you see in brackets here, it says the two men fight, and then Macduff kills Macbeth. Macduff says then to Malcolm, the son of Duncan, okay, who was killed, "Hail, King of Scotland." So Macduff is saying that Malcolm is now the new King of Scotland, okay, because his father was the king before. Now, this is the last part of your task. Okay, you should write down your answers to these questions, and I'm going to help you as we go. Okay, so number one, why might Macduff, okay, not to be confused with Macbeth, why might Macduff in particular be keen to try to kill Macbeth? Why is he keen to kill Macbeth? Now, if you were listening to that last part, you'll know, okay, what really good reason, well, what strong reason, there's maybe no good reason to kill anybody, okay, but what really strong motivation does he have to kill Macbeth or just to want him dead? Okay. What did Macbeth do wrong to Macduff? That's the question. Okay, go back and listen again if you need to. Now, number two, again, pause this as you need to, okay? Pause and write down your answers. So, number two, what surprising fact does Macduff tell Macbeth right before he murders him? What surprising fact does Macduff tell Macbeth right before he murders him? Okay, Macbeth says, my life is protected by magic, essentially, okay, and I can't be killed by someone born from a woman. And Macbeth then tells him, Macbeth was from his mother's womb untimely ripped. What does that mean again? Write that down. Okay, go back if you need to. Number three, how do Macduff's comments help to explain the witch's prophecies? Okay, so what Macduff says here, okay, about the way that he was born from his mother, Okay, he wasn't born in the normal way. He was removed from her womb, okay, by cesarean section, okay, or you can just write C section, okay. So the question is, how does Macduff saying that help to explain the witch's prophecies? Well, the witches said that no one born from a woman could harm Macbeth, okay? But Macduff wasn't born from a woman in the normal way, so he can harm Macbeth, okay? So that's the basic answer there is it explains why Macduff can harm Macbeth. Okay, write that down. Number 4, how does the audience feel at the end of the play? Okay, how do you think the audience feels? Do they feel like it was a good thing that Macbeth was killed? Are they happy that he was killed? Were they rooting for Macbeth and then they're disappointed? What do you think? Okay, when we hear Macduff say, "Hail, King of Scotland," is that like reason for feeling a little better? Is this a happy ending or not? Okay, now that can be a complicated question, right? So even if the audience disliked Macbeth or they didn't want him to be successful, it's still not a happy ending. It's violent and terrible in some ways. Okay, so yeah, you might say something about who they were rooting for and what feeling they're left with at the end. Okay, number 5, what points do you think Shakespeare might have been making in his play about good and evil? Now, who was evil? Okay, now Lady Macbeth actually asked evil spirits to come into her body, okay, to help her get what she wanted. And she plotted to kill the king. Now, remember what we said a while ago that killing a king was not just against the law, because the king was seen to be appointed by God. It was seen as a crime against God or a sin. Okay, so clearly Duncan was the good guy, he was the king. Okay, and therefore, by killing the king, Macbeth and Lady Macbeth become evil. Okay, now what happens to evil in the end? Okay, what do you think Shakespeare is showing about what happens to evil in the end? Okay, now the next point, what is Shakespeare saying about being loyal to your king? Is it important to be loyal to the king? Okay, and the last question, what is Shakespeare showing in this play about the supernatural? In other words, the witches and spirits and magic, prophecies or predictions about the future. Are they a good thing or do they lead people into trouble? Okay. And once you've answered those questions, you have finished with your Macbeth studies, your first Shakespeare studies in secondary school. So well done. Once again, as I've said before, don't worry about getting everything perfect here. Don't worry about understanding all the language. There's no expectation you'll do that. It's just about uh, experiencing it and giving it a try and learning a few things along the way and hopefully enjoying it. Okay. Really look forward to seeing all of you when we get back, and I hope you enjoy your break.